I'm in Genesis 37 today, and there are just so many things that I'm learning as I'm reading through the Bible this time. Here's something that is hugely and supremely important to remember as you read through the scriptures. As I read through the scriptures, I'm remembering this. The narrative of scripture, the redemptive story of scripture, hinges upon unjust suffering. Even when I look at Joseph's story, I could focus on the dream, and I have many times in the past. But this morning, I just saw so many other things. This morning, not only did I see Jesus in Joseph, I saw David in Joseph. And the way that Joseph is a teenager who is one of the youngest at this time. Benjamin was already born, but he was one of the youngest. He was a shepherd who tended the flock, just like David. And so when I think about Jesus being the son of David, who also was and is the great shepherd, I'm just like, man, this is so cool that the foreshadowing of scripture just lets you know who Jesus is going to be and how he's going to be. But in the light of all of the sun of the text, there's also some dark side of the moon of the text. And so you still see the favoritism that's being shown in their family. Jacob was favored by his mom, Rebecca, and here Jacob is favoring Joseph to the point where his brothers hate him. But what's really cool is his brothers go away and his father asks Joseph to go and get them. And I wrote in my Bible about his father's business. That's who Joseph was. Joseph was about his father's business. And who does that sound like? Jesus. And yet when he finds his brothers, they make the plans to kill him. When I read they made plans to kill him, I immediately thought of John chapter 5, John chapter 6. I immediately thought of hearing the scribes and the chief priests and the Pharisees plan to kill Jesus. What's amazing is they set up an opportunity for oppression. And they have the idea that they're going to kill him and then lie about killing him. But instead what they do is they say, hey, let's throw him in a cistern. Then he'll die on his own. What they basically are doing is taking the opportunity for oppression. They're throwing him in a cistern and acting like they didn't still kill him. No, they still killed him, right? Like just because they threw him in a cistern, he then is going to die and they would be responsible for his death. It just reminded me of how many times in the conversations I've had today about systemic injustice that people are like, well, that was back then. Well, if they throw him in a cistern right now, he doesn't die until 2 weeks later. It's still their responsibility. Unjust suffering is what Joseph is going through, much like Jesus, who will come. What's crazy is, at least to me, is that instead of killing him then, Reuben decides, I'm going to be a hero. But before Reuben can even be a hero, they take him out and they sell him into slavery. They sell him into slavery. They sell him into slavery. And not only do they sell him, but they sell him to distant relatives who are headed to Egypt. That just blows my mind that they sell him. And they even say these words, what will we gain by killing our brother? We would have to cover up a crime. Instead of hurting him, let's sell him to those Ishmaelite traders. Did they not think that that was hurting him? It almost sounds like these brothers have in mind that their mistreatment of their brother, that their lack of love for their brother is somehow justified by the fact that they're not killing him. It's like, no, you're still hurting him by selling him into slavery, right? You're still hurting him by not treating him the way that you would desire to be treated. You're still hurting him by not loving him and have compassion enough on him to see your own sin and go, hey, we are in error, not Joseph. It's crazy to me. It reminds me of the video of Amy Cooper where she was caught in the park and she was the one doing wrong, but wanted something else to happen to the person who's not in error. And that's them. They're mad at Joseph for his dreams. He's not wrong for his dreams. He can't control his dreams. But they're mad at him when he's done nothing wrong, Jesus. And they want to hurt him when he's done nothing wrong, Jesus. And they're acting like they're in the right. Pharisees, scribes, chief priests, these brothers. Well, what also sticks out to me, like I said, the dark side of this, is that lies and deceit run in their family. You know, Abraham lied to Pharaoh, lied to Abimelech. Isaac lied to Abimelech. Jacob lied to Isaac. And here, his sons are following suit. It runs in the family. So they kill a goat and they sprinkle or they dip Joseph's robe in the blood. And then they go and they say to their father that wild beasts clearly have torn him to pieces. Notice he deeply mourned. This is verse 34. He deeply mourned for his son for a long time. His family all tried to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. How were they trying to comfort him? I tell you how. They tried to keep the lie going. They created a narrative that the narrative itself was a lie. And that's how they tried to comfort their father. But their father had believed the lie. He took it hook, line, and sinker. And they created, even with the narrative, some substantive things to say, some evidence. It's early in the morning. I'm about to work out. Leave me alone. They created some evidence that their story is true, but their story is not true. The story is a lie. I will go to my grave mourning for my son, he would say, and then he would weep. Man, he was trying to communicate, this is breaking my heart. This is deep and tearing up my soul. It's tearing up his soul, and it's a lie. If we're not careful, we will continue to repeat this process of the lying that runs in the family. We'll continue this process of missing out on the gospel of unjust suffering. It is hard to preach the gospel of unjust suffering in a place of privilege. And when I say in a place of privilege, before you misunderstand that because of all that you're hearing in the culture, I mean, even living in America, even though I'm a black man in America and I certainly unjustly suffer here, if I'm being completely honest and transparent, and remember, vulnerability is the way forward. I still recognize there's a ton afforded to me that's not afforded to everybody else on the planet. And so sometimes if I'm not careful, I can approach this book with an American mindset, with a black American mindset. I can approach this book with a mindset that is not looking from God's perspective of what he's trying to communicate to me, but rather I can look at this book like a yearbook and begin to try to look for myself in it, instead of understanding that my identity comes from what God says in this book about me and to me and for me. And if I'm to see my spiritual poverty rightly, then I understand that the biblical narrative, the redemptive story of Scripture, is all about unjust suffering. That's who Jesus is. That's who Joseph is. Like I said before, I see Jesus in Esau. I saw Jesus in Hagar. And this story of unjust suffering is the gospel, as Jesus unjustly suffers, the righteous for the unrighteous, to bring you and me to God. Not to give us Sunday morning church, but to give us moment by moment covenant, community, and relationship. And that is the church, the Kyrie Oikos, Lord's house, which is where the word church comes from ultimately. Hope that this encourages you today. I hope it blesses you. I'm getting a workout. Please pray for me because we are doing a workout called the Samson, and it hurts. Love y'all. Peace.